walking with lions, flinging yourself off a skyscraper, and learning to perform underwater. It's all in a day's work here on The Travel Show. And welcome to The Travel Show with me, Krista Larwood. This week we'll be taking a look back at some of the stories and adventures we've brought to you over the past few months. Coming up.
Are we okay with them being that close?
Pretty good. Menace, menace, menace. You have to put intention behind it. It's nothing without intention.
Don't some people say to you, this is really weird?
Well, let's kick off our look back by revisiting Rajan's trip to the Spanish capital, Madrid, where performance art and theatre have been finding new forms of expression in the most unusual places.
Not for the faint-hearted. Welcome to Macbeth in Spanish, set in the ruthless advertising world of 1950s America, the so-called Mad Men era. The actors sometimes are so close you could lean over and straighten their ties. Maybe not. They look a bit preoccupied. The murder and intrigue all take place on one floor of this residential building, and everyone pitches in behind the scenes, which makes it very compact and a challenge for the actors.
There's something really interesting too about the audience being so close, because they become part of the show, of the play. And they are the play, and their energy sort of feeds us.
Así que, si me permites.
Por supuesto. Por aquí, por favor. Adelante. Adelante, caballeros.
I've got to say, what an intense experience. It's really powerful the way it's set in such an intimate surroundings. Very, very clever way of putting on a play.
But in austerity-hit Madrid, this inventive way of staging theatre has come about as much by necessity as design.
Madrid is a proud city with an illustrious history, but in recent years, thanks to the financial crisis and austerity measures, it's suffered more than most. Youth unemployment nationally is over 50%, and more than a third of people in this country are on the minimum wage. And one area that has really taken a hit is culture, with both public and private funding plummeting by a half.
One radical reaction to the crisis is this: a squatted building taken over by protest groups, which runs free classes in anything from dance to writing and microtheatre.
They tell us that you can only do art in museums or in big institutions, and that's not true. Like, art is something that has no relationship with money, and this is what we're trying to prove.
At this former butcher's shop, they've taken the budget theatre concept to its logical extension. This is microtheatre at its most, well, micro. 5 different original playlets, each 15 minutes in length, are each performed 6 times a night, with up to 34 performances in total, in tiny, intimate venues like this. And at €4 or $5 a shot, it's affordable for most, and short enough to be bearable if you don't understand a word.
Performing this is like you're doing a movie. Cinema, you know, it's here because people can see your eyes.
At times, it resembles being in a crowded railway station cafe waiting for your departure to be announced. But it's become so successful that one play has been adapted and extended into a full-length feature film, with another on the way, and the concept is being exported around the world. Proof indeed that there's nothing wrong with making a drama out of a crisis.
Also in March, Addy headed to Venice to find out about a scheme which claims that it will help hold back the floodwaters that threaten one of the world's most iconic cities. It's also not the most wheelchair-friendly of destinations, so Addy had a job on his hands.
Just 2 days before this year's carnival, bad weather and high tides brought a familiar sight back to Venice. The flooding returned, and so did the wooden boards that seemed to be appearing with increasing regularity. One of the lowest lying and most frequently flooded areas also happens to be the city's most iconic, St. Mark's Square. For tourists, the waters are a novelty, but restoration works have been forced on both the Basilica and the Campanile bell tower here after water damage. It's hard to believe that during bad weather, this whole square has been flooded. I mean, it's massive. And during high tide, the levels reach up to 1 metre high. So businesses like this have to constantly think about how to protect themselves from the floodwater. Café Lavina's been on the square since the mid-18th century. The composer Richard Wagner used to wet his whistle here every afternoon. It's got pedigree, but it's also got a big problem with flooding. How often does it flood? How many times a year?
Last year was more than 60 times.
60? More than 60 times?
More than 60 times, yes.
Do you think the flooding is worse now than it was before?
Yes, a little bit worse, yes. Because it's more often. 2 and 3 years ago, I saw a lot of people that swimming on the square. They undressed and everything.
Massimo's tipped off about future flooding events on his smartphone.
With the color is green is normal.
So it's 13 centimeters
now.
Now. Yeah.
Okay.
And when the alarm finally sounds and there's no other option, he heads out the back to prepare the storm doors. They're heavy as well, really heavy. And so
I told you before about when the level was very high, the high for here, you know? 10 centimeters and the water's coming up.
The problem is caused partly by bad weather and fluctuating tides, but also subsidence means that Venice is slowly sinking. When you take into account climate change and rising sea levels, the future looks bleak. But lurking beneath the lagoon, there may be an answer. The Moses Project, a vast chain of barriers protecting the ancient city from the sea. Moses isn't due to open until 2017, but here in the control room, there's hope that Venice can be saved.
Addy there investigating ways to secure the future of Venice while preserving the best of the past. And speaking of the past, a country which made headlines for all the wrong reasons until relatively recently was Sri Lanka. But after years of a bitter civil war, tourists are now returning to Tamil strongholds in the north. And it's all thanks to a special new train, as Henry discovered when he visited there in April.
Now, there's nothing remarkable about the engine, nor the carriage, in fact. What is remarkable is where it's headed. This train is going to Jaffna.
Jaffna Peninsula is more than 200 miles away, right at the top of the Tamil-dominated north. It was once a stronghold of the Tamil Tigers, a separatist group fighting for independence during Sri Lanka's bloody civil war.
The fighting meant that the train routes to Jaffna were suspended in 1990. The train tracks disappeared, even the railway sleepers we used to help make the makeshift bunkers. And for 25 years, not a single train has entered the city of Jaffna. But last year, all that changed.
For more than 5 years, the tracks were gradually reinstated, until in October 2014, the Queen of Jaffna became the first train to roll into the northern city to huge celebrations. A few months later, they're already running 5 trains a day. Despite the early start, this one's packed, mainly with Sri Lankans, but there are a fair few tourists as well.
We like the traveling by trains here. because you can see the country
And your itinerary, what have you got planned to do?
we will see where we go there. You have just 2 or 3 pages about the north and nearly nothing about Jaffna.
It's better to catch before all the tourists comes, you know.
After 6 hours of travelling, we finally make it to Jaffna Station, a building that just 3 years ago was an empty shell.
It kind of shows how much has been rebuilt since back in the day, and the train station has been done very well.
Well, in addition to getting to explore fascinating destinations, we also probably get more than our fair share of adrenaline rushes here on the programme. Here are some of our favourites. This is really one of the best jobs in the world sometimes.
I'd like to show everyone where you're about to go, all the way down there.
Oh my God.
That's where you're going.
3, 2, 1, go!
11 seconds later, having travelled at almost 100 kilometres an hour, my feet are firmly on the ground.
How was that? Yeah? Oh dear. Oh dear. Gaining speed. Gaining speed. Oh, it's so fast. Now they make it look very easy, but it's far from it. You've got to be careful of where you're heading, and your speed just picks up a crazy amount, so you need to plant your feet down to slow you down. And watch out for those trees. Ah, close call.
What happens if I go away from the wind too much?
You will be capsizing.
Capsizing, okay.
Yes.
Fine. Okay, got you.
All right.
Did I listen? Did I hear?
So there you have it. Within about 10 minutes, this guy is an expert. Well, so I think anyway.
Next up on our look back at the travel show over the past few months.
We're heading to Africa to remember how Addy headed into the bush in Zimbabwe in May to get as close as he could to the king of the jungle.
But first, Henry's in London's West End trying to be a lion and not really pulling it off.
Fairly snug.
The Lion King has become famous for its innovative masks and puppetry. And I can't let the actors have all the fun.
Down and extend. That's where you would have extended. Yes, keep low.
It's time for me to become the lion.
Pretty good. Menace, menace, menace. You have to put intention behind it. It's nothing without intention.
The movement's based on a Javanese style of dance, almost balletic.
I lost all coordination with me concentrating on moving these 2 little levers.
If you put it out, you're an animal, you're an animal, you're an animal, you're human.
You're a pro.
Here in Zimbabwe, lion cubs that have been born in captivity are taken in and cared for and then released into vast fenced-off game reserves, either here or over the border in Zambia, where they form a pride and learn to fend for themselves. Once these lions breed, the plan is to transfer their cubs out into the wild. But getting those lions born in captivity used to the bush is the first step on a long journey. Although interaction with humans is kept to a minimum, the project does give you a chance to get close to the lions while they're still relatively young. These ones are just 12 months old.
Are we okay with them being that close?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's the female?
That's the female standing up.
She's massive.
She's more like investigating on us. She has, if you check, she has been constantly looking at you, because now she might be interested in this wheelchair, which is a very good sign to us that whatever surrounds them, they're always investigating. You can even see that with the boy, his mane is developing now.
Yeah.
Hey, cubs, how are you?
Zulu and Pendu are brother and sister. and they've formed a special bond with their keeper Musa. But it's a bond that eventually will have to be broken if these lions are to learn to fend for themselves.
They're so comfortable with you. And that is just, it's just beautiful. You're the captain at the moment.
At the moment, I'm the captain.
Yeah.
In around 8 months, it'll be too dangerous to walk with Zulu and Pendu, so I'm lucky to get a chance to do it now.
Well, to finish our look back at the last few months of the travel show, we've selected a couple of films that really illustrate what a wide, beautiful, unexpected world we're lucky enough to get to explore. Ones that show there's always something new to discover, even if it's underwater and you're dressed as a mermaid. These are the Wiki-Watchy Mermaids, who perform underwater acrobatics for audiences in this auditorium, built into the side of a natural spring. Each year, hundreds of thousands come to the park to see them, including plenty of wide-eyed youngsters and not so young.
Obviously, swimming takes a lot out of you, and staying underwater for that long, and we're dropping our hoses and holding your breath, so it takes a lot out of you. It's a lot of arm strength. You definitely get some really good muscles out of it.
So do you think I could be a mermaid?
Yes, that would be awesome. I'd love to take you in and teach you how to do it.
So one rather undignified costume change later. I've got a mermaid tail!
Yay! Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Whoa! It's really cold! Swimming as a mermaid is definitely tougher than these guys make it look. Still, after a couple of attempts, I do manage a mermaid smile and a wave. The best I can hope for, I think.
Out here in the beautiful wide plains of southern Africa, you really feel at one with nature. You hear the chirping of the swamp-faced boo-boo, the occasional cackling of a hyena. But hold on a sec, is that drums I can
Skinflint are one of Botswana's leading young heavy metal bands. Despite their aggressive appearance, everybody I meet here is quite friendly. These gigs take place monthly all around Botswana, and newcomers like me are welcome.
It's like an expression, freedom of expression, power, independence. That's how I look at heavy metal. And it's also music that allows you to experiment a lot, because it has no boundaries.
As the band gets into its stride, the crowd begins to mosh. This is how some rock fans like to express themselves, but for me, it's definitely a first. Have it! And this isn't just about dressing the part. This is a new generation claiming heavy metal as their own.
People should maybe just open their eyes, not put Africa in a box like they always do, They only think that Africa is a certain way, we're poverty-ridden and there's a lot of negatives about it, but we're also very creative people, even though it's not publicized much. There's a lot of talented musicians and artists in Africa, so I think Skinflint is an example of that.
Let's face it, we all like someone to share a meal with, don't we? Well, here they think they come up with the answer to that. It's called mukbang, which translates as eating broadcasts. Some people label it food porn. John Young is a music teacher, 28 years old and living with her parents and elder sister in an apartment on the outskirts of Seoul. How did you actually start doing this program? How did it all begin?
제가 처음에는 먹방을 이거 왜 봐?
Well, I couldn't understand before why people were watching eating programs, but my friends said they were interesting. One day I found myself watching it all through the night. Then my sister asked me why I was watching the program. She said, "You like to cook and eat a lot. Why don't you do the program?"
안녕하세요. 땅콩이입니다. 유튜브 시청자 여러분 안녕하세요.
And so she did. Now, 4 nights a week, she broadcasts online to lonely viewers who now have an instant pop-up dining partner. Sometimes she cooks her own food. Sometimes she orders a takeaway. Sometimes it's both. After all, there's 4 hours of airtime to fill a night. It's minutes before tonight's transmission starts. John Young is not the only one doing this. Around the country, thousands of others are about to host their own similar shows. Does she ever wonder, though, why it's become so popular?
대리만족이 제일 큰 것 같아요.
I think it's mainly to get vicarious satisfaction. Many people are on a diet in Korea, so they get satisfied by watching me eat.
Don't some people say to you, "This is really weird"?
근데 저도 그랬었거든요.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought when I first started. But people who watch this program really enjoy it.
Do you think in a way it's a kind of therapy for some people?
너무 우울했는데 언니 보면은 기분이 제일 먹방.
Yes, some say they are depressed, but I make them feel better and I cheer them up.
많은 것 같아서 좀 좋아요. 새해 복 많이 받으셔서.
Jung Young, the queen of online cooking in South Korea back in May. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's travel show. I hope you enjoyed looking back with us. Do join us next week if you can. When?
Addie heads to Benidorm, a package holiday destination which sees more than 12 million tourists a year. But can this lively city really gain UNESCO World Heritage status, alongside the likes of the Great Wall of China and the Egyptian pyramids?
That's next week. Until then, why not check out our social media feeds? You can sign up using the information appearing on the screen now. But for now, from me, Crystal Loward, and the rest of the Travel Show team, it's goodbye.